So let's start off. There's a lot of Japanese terminology in here. You obviously don't have to speak Japanese in order to be a referee, but you should be familiar with all of these terms and try and learn them as much as possible. So it starts off with the gyoji. The picture on this slide shows you what gyoji looks like if you've seen professional sumo in Japan. The gyoji is the referee. He's the most visible official because he is in the ring for the majority of the time that a tournament is going on. The referee starts, stops, and declares the results of bouts. So he's kind of the one in charge until something goes wrong, and then the real guy in charge steps up, and we'll talk about him in a minute. So for amateur sumo, instead of the fancy outfit and the war paddle, the gumbai that you see here, the appropriate dress is a white dress shirt, white pants, black bow tie, and you can also wear white gloves with that. Footwear is not specified. Some people go barefoot. Some people wear white socks. Some people wear brand new white tennis shoes that have never been on any other ground before. So that's kind of up in the air. But what you really want to do is to have a nice, clean, crisp appearance that doesn't distract from anything else that's going on. All right, next, please. Is there just a delay, George, or you got the next?
Oh, did not go over?
No. Sorry. There it goes. Okay. So before the fight starts, if you take a look at the picture here, you can see the guy in the middle that's wearing all white. That's the gyoji, the referee. And this is immediately before a fight starts, the picture there. But what you need to remember prior to this is when you walk up to get into the ring, it's always a good idea to bow to show respect when you're entering the sumo ring. This goes for the officials, the wrestlers, everyone involved, anytime you go into the dohyo. Once you get into the ring, you signal to the wrestlers who are on the opposite sides of the ring to enter the ring. You can either do this with a nod or use your hands, but you get them to enter in and you say the word rei. Rei means bow. And what you want to do is for you and the two wrestlers to bow to each other at the same time. The wrestlers are facing each other and you are at a 90-degree angle to them. Then while the wrestlers do their ring entrance ceremony, known as chirichozu, this is where they squat in the sonkyo position and wash their hands, clap their hands, open a prayer book, show they have no weapons. You just want to keep your heels on the border of the ring, which is called the tawara. It would traditionally be rice straw bales, but probably foam in most of the mats that we use here. But you're just staying in that position at the very back of the ring. Then once the wrestlers have finished the chirichozu and they moved towards the white lines, the starting lines in the center, which are called the shikiri-sen, when they move towards those, then you also take a couple of steps forward and the wrestlers go down into their sonkyo or resting position. This is the one where your heels are close to touching, your legs are spread out, and your hands on your knees. Then after the wrestlers have had a chance to stare each other down for a moment, the gyoji says kamaite, which means to get ready. The wrestlers get up, stand up, and then they move back into their fighting positions, which the picture on this slide shows. And as they're doing this, you slide back towards the tawara again, pretty much in the exact position that you see here. You try and straddle the white lines, the shikiri-sen yourself, as the wrestlers have to keep their hands behind it. The last thing that you say is teo tsuite matanash. Teo tsuite means hands down. Matanash means it's time. There's no time left. And at this point, your hands are extended where your little fingers and thumbs, your little fingers are down, your thumbs are up, perpendicular to the ground. And you make sure that the wrestlers have all four hands behind the lines. So if each wrestler has both hands down behind the lines, then we're ready to fight. So next slide, please. So again, during the fight in amateur sumo, the gyoji has a very important responsibility of starting the fight. The way you start the fight is with the command hakeoi. So hakeoi indicates that the wrestlers can start their tachiai or initial charge. Prior to the referee saying this in amateur sumo, the wrestlers are not supposed to advance. If they do, the referee can yell out mata, which stops the action, stops the fight, and you can have the fight start over again. This is mainly done because it's very difficult to synchronize the charge, and professionals have lots of experience doing it. In amateur sumo, you want to make sure that everyone just has an equal opportunity. You can try as much as possible that when the last fist goes down to say hakioi at that moment. That's ideally the situation, but you definitely want to make sure that all four hands are down. All right. While the match is going on, this is not so critical. If you don't do this, not a big deal. But while the fighting is going, you can say the words nokota, nokota, which basically means your opponent is remaining. So the fight is still going. Absolutely not critical to be able to say this. You also can say hakioi if there's a stop in the action and you want the wrestlers to get fighting again. Not super critical. The last thing is when the match is over, the referee is supposed to yell shobuata. Now, I will tell you that I have never once said this in a fight. I don't know why. I was never told to say this, but the International Sumo Federation rules say that it should be yelled. But the main thing that we do here in the US at an amateur level is we extend our hand out, either our right hand or our left hand, depending on which side the winning wrestler is from. And you want to do this as quickly as possible after the match is over. And the reason for this is if you indicate your left side, which is the West wrestler, the Nishi side, and a judge disagrees with you, then there's a procedure to be followed. If you indicate with your right hand that the wrestler who started on the right or Higashi side of the dohyo is the winner, and someone disagrees with you, again, this is so that immediately the judges who are surrounding the ring have an opportunity to let you know that there is some sort of disagreement or something that they would like to confirm about that decision. So once you've had this initial indication, everyone goes back to their starting positions. The referee back to the south side or the rear of the dohyo with your heels back up against the outer part of the ring. The wrestlers return to their initial starting points inside the ring, and everyone bows. And this is done again with the command rei or bow. It's very good to have everyone do this in a timely manner. You don't want to have one wrestler come and bow and out of the ring before the other wrestler even returns to his starting position. So as the referee, your job is to try and synchronize this so that both wrestlers are in position and everyone bows at the same time. And then you announce the winner, either if it's the wrestler on your left, it's Nishi no Kachi. If it's on your right, it's Higashi no Kachi. So you're just saying the East is the winner or the West is the winner. Once the referee has made this call, the decision cannot be reversed. So it's very important that prior to doing this, as the referee, you take a look around at the judges who are surrounding the ring to make sure no one has their hand raised to indicate that they have a question or concern or disagree with what happened in the fight. Otherwise, this is kind of where the referee's role ends in the actual fight. Any questions about any of this so far procedurally, or just a technical point, or wanting to make sure you understand?
For those of us who aren't great with visual explanations, can you do that hand movement in front of the camera so that we can see it?
Sure. Can you see
Thanks.
me now?
I can see you from your head up.
Okay. So to the side, your hand will be out to the side like this. So pointing, like if you were going to say, I caught a fish this big, and you go all the way out with your hands to the side. So like this, pointing to the side, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a weird question that I don't know if you even know the answer to. Is there a reason we wear white? I thought white was a taboo, like death related color in Japan.
White and black for formal occasions, like the color tie that you wear, one you wear to a wedding and one you wear to a funeral. But for referees, I think white is just it helps you stand out. There's no symbolic reference that transfers over from those other things to sumo, as far as I know.
To prevent errors, can we have a cheat sheet attached to our arm for the language, or is that going to be the no-go?
I don't think there's any. I don't have any problem with that. If that's something that helps you, especially in the beginning, I don't see any reason why not. If quarterbacks in the NFL can have all their plays there, why can't we have something? Yeah.
Fantastic.
Will we get a copy of this presentation by chance?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's being recorded, and you'll also have the slides shared as well.
Fantastic.
There's also a very nice video on the Sumo Federation website with the basics, including the language, how to pronounce everything, when to say it.
And I'll share the PowerPoint and the video into the group chat as well. I'll spread it out a bunch.
Excellent. Next slide then, please, George.
Okay.
Okay, these are some of the important things you need to remember as a gyoji. You are again, the most visible figure in the fight, and it is up to you to declare a winner. If you are watching something as closely as possible and you cannot see what happened, you still have to declare a winner, either extending your left hand out for Nishi no Kachi or your right hand out for Higashi no Kachi. It doesn't matter. If you're wrong, it's okay, but you can't not declare a winner. This is why it's important that you move around the ring. Once you've declared the fight, you have to kind of go with the flow of the action. And if at all possible, try not to have your back to the front side of the ring, the north side, which is typically where the camera is going to be recording the matches, and the chief judge is also going to be sitting. So as much as possible, you try to keep from blocking that view. Otherwise, you do whatever you need to do to get into position to see what happens. Yes, Jake. Okay. Very
I'm also
good.
working on having potentially 1 or 2 more views on top of that one as well for you guys to have support with too. So
Excellent.
do you want me
Quentin, did
to
you have a question?
do you want me
Yeah.
to handle the question order, Packy, or do you want to?
Sure. Sure.
All right, Quentin, do you want to go next?
Yep. So we're staying inside the lines of the circle when we're officiating, or we're standing outside the circle?
You are standing inside. However, if you need to go outside, it's not a problem. If we were wrestling on a dirt ring, there is a small band of sand just outside the ring that you are not supposed to step on. It's there to indicate if someone does go out, there's visual evidence that their foot or toe or something went out. But in our circumstances where we're almost always fighting on some type of canvas or vinyl mat, the referee can freely step in and out of the ring during the match in order to get in the best viewing position without affecting that.
One other thing to add really quick as well when it comes to like views is that there should be we're working on making sure there's enough refs that there's 4 refs as well in each corner watching it on top of it to support the head refs. So view wise, that should be good. Matt, you want to go next?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Great
Great.
question. Sebastian, no.
I had my mic turned off before accidentally. Anyways, I had a few questions regarding maybe the last couple slides. As I understand it, as was relayed to me, that John Jock said that the athletes, and I suppose the Gyoji, enter the ring, then they bow. Is that correct? Is that how you understand it?
Yes. I was taught in Japan, you bow before you get into the ring, and this applied to referees or wrestlers. But the official bow that the referee initiates with the command "Ray," all of the wrestlers, the 2 wrestlers are inside the ring, and the referee is inside the ring.
Thanks.
The referee should be inside the ring calling the wrestlers in. And once they're both in, indicate by saying "Ray," and all 3 bow.
Okay, that was my follow-up question.
Okay.
So essentially, it's not uncommon to see 2 bows right there at the beginning. One as they're entering onto the dojo, and then the second official one to be part of the match.
That is correct.
Hmm.
Sebastian,
I
do you want
have
to go
another
next?
question too,
Or-
but I can wait.
Well, no, go ahead, Matt. What's your question? Your second
Okay.
question.
So I was watching some sort of European championships recently and other stuff before. From what I've heard, as soon as that second athlete as soon as the last fist of the 4 fists touches the ground, the athletes go for it. You don't really wait for the Gyoji to call Hakyoi because I don't know.
Yes, I understand, and there is a clear difference between what the rules say and what is written. I'm sorry, what actually happens in some cases. That's why I said that you try as much as possible as the referee to say hakioi as you see the last hand touch the ground. But it clearly states in the rules, and you are allowed as a referee to stop the fight if someone goes before you've indicated that it's okay to go.
That makes sense. Are we having only one ref at this?
There
event?
is one referee, the rest are judges. So we'll get to judges right after we do the referee here.
Okay, I'm just wondering because there's money on the line for the Salt Lake event, and so if there are multiple refs enforcing it differently, I could understand that could be an issue.
Oh, there will be multiple refs in the ring, yes.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, at different times. Sorry, I thought you meant in the ring at the same time.
Nope.
But yes, this is something that the head judge, you need to clarify this before the tournament or event you're at begins. There's usually a referees meeting before an event, and things like this are discussed among the referees.
So just so you guys know, the way that it will be done at Harvest Days on August 5th is the ref's call is when you start. So we'll tell the wrestlers that as well. But the ref's call is when it starts, not when all four are down. So if you're any of the wrestlers who try to wait to the last second then tap and go, not going to work. It's when all four are down, the ref calls it.
Yeah, but we're also encouraging the referees to call that as close to when those four hands come down as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like wrestling. You're not supposed to wait a long time to cut it. It's supposed to be called pretty close to the same.
Yeah. So, as Rob said, yeah, exactly. Sebastian, you're next. Hey, can you hear me?
Or maybe Brandon, I guess.
All right.
It's Sebastian's. You good?
Brandon.
So I understand like the Japanese were okay to, when we say Ray, we're going to have a lot of new or maybe first time even wrestlers that may or may not know the Japanese word for that. Is it okay to say Ray and then maybe subtly say bow or like these different commands, like, where you're saying the Japanese word and then kind of indicating kind of what it is with like an English word?
What I would encourage you to do is for anyone who's going to be there that it's their first time at a sumo tournament, something like that, is prior to the tournament beginning, try to go over all of these things with them. Practice the chirichozu, the opening ceremony, everything, so that they know what's going on. It makes things flow a whole lot better if people at least have a basic idea. If at least one person in the ring knows what's going on, that makes a big difference because the other person can just copy what they're doing. If it's both people, it's their first time ever and they don't know what they're doing, it's a little bit difficult and I guess the word kind of embarrassing comes to mind. So if your club has someone that's going to be there for the first time, I would highly encourage you in advance of the tournament to make sure you've gone over this kind of stuff with them, in addition to teaching them how to wrestle, that you actually teach them what the sport of sumo involves from a traditional sense as well.
Well, and I don't think I've been to a tournament that didn't have some kind of demonstration like that at the very beginning. Also for the fans, like for anybody that is around. So, because it's interesting for them to see the terms and the ritual and stuff as well. So yeah, I think we'll definitely be doing something very similar at the beginning of this.
I will tell you that sometimes instead of the shobuata that you're supposed to say at the end of the fight, I will sometimes yell out or finish or some other word like that if it looks like the wrestlers don't understand that one of them has stepped out of the ring or something. So, and I'm reading Sebastian's question.
Here, I can read it out loud just so that because the messages won't be in the recording. So
okay.
Sebastian said, "I'm not sure why my mic isn't working. I was wondering. It says that if any part of the foot besides the sole touches outside the ring, they lose. So that means if any part of the foot, like the toe, touches first, it's a loss. And also, does that mean that sumo can step out on their soles and still win if they stay on their soles and make the other touch first?"
Okay, so this is the next bullet point in the presentation anyway. So as the referee, you need to understand that there are basically two ways that you win in sumo. The first one is to make any part of your opponent's body other than the soles of their feet touch the ground. So that's separate from going outside of the ring. So there's two different ways. One is to force your opponent outside of the ring, and the other is to force any part of their body other than the soles of their feet to touch the ground first. This also, there are some very slight exceptions to this. If you are in the process of throwing someone and your foot rolls over as you are throwing them, then that is not counted as a loss. But for the most part, part, those two rules are pretty strict. The big exceptions are the two that are listed here, which is tsuridashi and shinitai. Now, if you look, the pictures on this slide, the top picture is an example of tsuridashi. Tsuridashi means you pick your opponent up in the air and you step outside the ring with them under full control, and your foot touches the ground first. But because you've picked them up in the air and you're in control, you still win the fight. Okay. And then shinitai is the other picture. And in this example, the wrestler who is in the top position is going to win this fight, even though his hand is going to touch first. And that's because his opponent is off balance in an unrecoverable position. And his hand going down is considered a move for safety of both wrestlers so that his total weight is not going down on top of his opponent. These are big exceptions, and the shinitai rule, I hope when I'm refereeing a tournament, I don't like to ever see this come up. I want it to be absolutely the last case scenario. You first go with the two rules before that. Going outside the ring first loses, or touching the ground first loses. And then you come to these exceptions as a last resort. And I see we have lots more questions.
Yeah, let's go with Rob next.
Okay.
Well, I guess one of mine was when you mentioned that if you are doing a throw, so like if I have a bad habit from wrestling or judo and I'm trying to do a hip toss and my back foot, like you said, flips over and drags the top part of my foot along the ground while I'm doing the throw, that one does not disqualify me as long as it's during the throw.
I would have to see it to know exactly what you're talking about. But the main thing you're trying to avoid here is a wrestling maneuver where you would put your knee down first and then throw. So if it's part of the throwing action and basically your opponent is already you're basically already controlled the situation and your foot rolls over, then I'd say no, that does not count as you losing. But
okay.
But in your specific, if there's a specific wrestling move, I would have to kind of see it.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I was speaking kind of generally. So like, if for instance, I was just dragging my feet to prevent from going out and I was like toes, the top of my foot dragging along the ground, that would be considered down. But if it's in a technique and you're actually like just kind of doing it as a part of this throw, then that's where the rule would sit and get gray. Basically.
Yeah, it's like if it's an inadvertent thing happening, if it's an integral part of the technique, such as putting the knee down for the throw, then no, it's definitely a loss. If it's an inadvertent thing that as a process of the throw, somehow your foot flips over, then that does not count against you.
Okay, thanks. That answers my question.
Okay.
Quinn, do you want to go next?
Yes. So that second picture there, it looks like he's throwing a suplex. So if you do throw a suplex and you touch first, you're out. Like even if you have control of the opponent and you're gonna throw them behind you, because of physics, you're gonna touch first. Do you still lose?
It may look like a suplex, but this one is given as an example because the aggressor in this case is the one on top.
Oh, he just charged over
on bottom.
Oh, I see.
Well, and I can also speak from example. If you suplex, you better be turning over because I've lost a couple times because I suplex, land on my back, and then we all roll over to the side. But clearly I landed first, so it was not.
Okay, so if you do throw a suplex, then you need to put them under you before you hit. Okay, good.
Yes.
Good to know.
I don't see any other questions. Anyone else?
I just had a quick question because I know I showed up a little late. Did we need that little? I think I edited it down to like 8 minutes with the examples.
We haven't used those yet.
We looked at that.
We will show those after we go over the Kinjite a little bit later.
Oh, okay, cool. Because I know there's at least one really good example of what you talked about with the Suridashi, where lifting them out, even if your foot touches first. So that's why I was curious if we'd seen that yet. But if not yet, no worries.
Yeah, we'll get to those.
Oh, sounds good. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Do you want me to go next slide?
Yes, because I think we already mentioned you have to look around at the judges before you announce the decision. If any judges raise their hand, then you need to have a discussion with them. So this is where we get to talking about the judges. The judges are called shimpan. The head judge is the shimpancho. The shimpancho typically is facing the referee. So in our tournaments, you'll probably have like a scores table, announcer, and the head judge will all be there. Then the other referees typically would be spread out as you see in that first picture, the animated looking picture. You'll have one judge on the left side, one on the right side, and two behind. However, for practical purposes, in a lot of our tournaments, we put them on the corners. So you'll have 4 judges, one on each corner, not directly on the ring, but in an area just outside of the ring. And then you'll have the head judge at the front. And this pretty much gives you the best angles possible to cover all different sides of the fight. If you see something, if someone steps out, the referee doesn't notice it, or if you disagree with the referee's call, you raise your hand, raise your right hand to get the attention of the referee, of the gyoji. And if that happens, the wrestlers, instead of going back to their initial positions and bowing, step out of the ring, and the judges all get up and enter the ring and have a discussion. And this is called a monoi. Once this happens, the referee, as being the official in charge, changes. It doesn't really change. The shimpancho or head judge is always in charge, but only when the referee's call is questioned does it come into effect like this. So the head judge will preside over this meeting of the judges and the referee. And basically what's supposed to happen, sometimes the order can be a little bit different, but typically the chief judge will ask the referee why they called the fight the way they did, what they saw, if they saw someone's hand touch or someone's foot go out. The judge who raised their hand saying they saw something different than the referee would then state their case. Any other judge is allowed to express their opinion as to what they saw happen. You can abstain from commenting, and typically this is because you were in a position where you couldn't see what happened. It was something that happened that your view was blocked, so you can abstain. But at this point, the judges now make the decision. The referee does not really get a vote in this process. The referee has already made their decision, and someone in the judges potentially is questioning it. So the 5 referees that are left, the 5 judges that are left, and the chief judge now make the decision, and the chief judge is ultimately the one who has to make the decision. If there's not a clear winner and the judges don't agree, no, I guess we have a limit of 1 hour on our call. Ooh, okay.
Hey, I'm going to extend it.
Okay. So the chief judge at this point hopefully is the most experienced of all of the judges that are present. They make a decision, and then we go back in and the referee will announce. If it's the same winner, the referee can announce again who the winner is that they initially indicated. They can reverse the decision, and the judges tell the referee to indicate the other wrestler, or there can be something called a tori naoshi. And a tori naoshi is a rematch. A rematch is typically, you'll see these a lot on fights that are super close, when it's really difficult to determine a winner. It's very new that we've gone to watching replay on these types of decisions. So this could help in making a decision. And the judges may be able to make a decision without having to have a rematch, which I know a lot of wrestlers would prefer this. because everyone wants, if you won legitimately, of course, you want to be declared the winner. You just have to understand that prior to now, it's just been human eyes and a very quick time frame of trying to sort it out. And to be honest, just like with any other professional sport, sometimes even from the replay, you can't tell what's going on. So you have to have a rematch. So this is where you're typically going to see the judges come into play. Otherwise, the judges are kind of sitting there and you don't even realize that they're there. Other than occasionally you'll see the judges or the referee come out removing debris from the ring or tightening the straps over the Tawara or something like that. Otherwise, they're just kind of there. You want to have their involvement as little as possible because it means that the referee is calling in the way that all the judges feel is called and the fights are going smoothly. Any questions about the Shimpan?
I guess this is more just is instant replaying become more of a thing in sumo? Because I never really, I felt like especially the pro sumo, they were really fighting. Like they would, if it's that close to need instant replay, just redo it, right? Kind of.
Well, no, video replay in professional sumo has existed for a long time, and there is a actual replay official, and the judges actually speak to them during the fight. If they have a mono-e, they will actually speak to the replay official.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you guys know if any of the Texas tournaments this year have had replay since nationals? Well, so we're gonna my goal. I'm working on it, but my goal is to have a few angles for you refs to be able to review to make sure we get the right call. And so I imagine we got to be one of the first 5 tournaments in the country to have done that.
My only issue with instant replay is when you have a fight and someone from the audience, typically the boyfriend or girlfriend of whoever lost the fight, comes running up with their phone and says, "But watch, look on my phone." So as long as it's an official procedure and things at a tournament, I think it's only a positive thing.
We will. We have a guy in the club who's bringing 2 different, at least a few different views. So he's got some tripods he's going to bring and set up. So Matt, do you have a question? Or sorry.
I had a comment. I was recently at a Texas tournament and was able to shinpon a little bit. And Tom Zabel was actually the head judge for probably about half of that. But one thing to note that I thought was pretty helpful was as the head judge or the gyoji on the doyo, you can't always see everything. And so they initially have to point to one of the wrestlers' sides to make an initial judgment. But he said, if I'm shooting looks at you, concerned looks, that means you need to raise your hand as a shimpan so we can talk about it. And sure enough, later in the day, he gave me a look and I was like, okay, I'm raising my hand. And he couldn't see what happened at all. The wrestlers twisted away from him and he couldn't really see who landed first. So I thought that was pretty helpful.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Gyojis can't always be in the best position, and yeah, the look on our faces, it usually gives it away that we really don't know, or else you see. So yeah, this is a great time for the judges to be able to help out the referee. You mean about the confused look or the hands going both? Yeah. I don't know that it's a policy or procedure. I think it's just what happens, because you can sometimes tell that the referee thinks they're in a good position, and right at the last second, the action completely goes the other direction. And then you're like, yeah. And then you'll kind of see them, okay, I'll stick my hand out here, but yeah, you don't really know what's going on. It's not something we've ever gone over before. I'd never heard anything like Tom talking to Matthew about that, but yeah.
It was helpful too because we had an inexperienced Gyoji for some of the matches who didn't know as much rules as the Shinpan.
Yes.
So that was a poor case, but it was pretty helpful.
Yeah.
And so since I was actually facing him, because there's the four corners, I was one of the two that were kind of like facing him, quote. So we had to keep an extra eye out for that. But
yes.
Anyways.
How many do you want to go next?
Sure. I was just thinking about injuries during the actual match itself, and is there like a specific way that we're supposed to call or address those?
Yes. So anytime there's an injury to a wrestler during a match, the action is supposed to be stopped immediately. In my experience, I have not had an injury happen in the middle of a match. And by that, I mean, typically when I've seen an injury, it's come on the last throw where someone is winning and someone's losing, and the way they fall dislocates a shoulder or breaks a bone or something like that. But yes, there's a bullet point later, but the referee and the judges are there for the safeties of the wrestlers as well. So anytime there's an injury, the action should be stopped immediately.
Well, and George can confirm, but the festival will also have emergency personnel on hand right there. You know, there'll probably likely be an ambulance and some fire people there with paramedic stuff.
We do have an injury process for the tournament as well, which I will go over with you refs ahead of time. But I just wanted to make sure. They're the process and steps to go from there. But Sebastian had a question he wanted to throw in as well. Is it possible to be a Goji in training during matches, or are you required to know everything before becoming a ref?
I would highly recommend that the referee, the head judge, the Shinpancho, and the Gyoji, the referee, be experienced people. And that if you want experience, to start as one of the Shinpan or judges first. That gives you a chance that the decision-making is not 100% resting on your shoulders. You're up close to the action. You'll get to see lots of matches in a very close-up manner where you can see what's happening, and you'll get to participate in the decision-making process of a mono-e. I don't think it's a good idea to put someone out as the head judge or the gyoji who's never done it before. But that being said, if you don't have any other options, hopefully you at least have people who have done it during some sort of practice or something, rather than in an actual tournament. That's fine. That's still experience. And you know, you can even devote some time at your practices leading up to a tournament like this, specifically to going over all of the rituals, and have people come in and bow and do the chiri chozu and everything that they do ahead of time, so that everyone is comfortable with it from the wrestlers and the referee standpoint.
So everyone in Utah, we do the full ritual at practice. We practice on Tuesdays at 7 and Saturdays either at like 11 or noon at Midvale City Park. So anyone who hasn't had any practices on matches, come will reach out to me. I'm going to put my phone number in the chat for you guys as well. But we do practice. We'll have people be a ref. We haven't done a lot of the vocabulary practice, but we're going to incorporate that into it as well. But yeah, we've got a couple weeks before the tournament, and so there's going to be a lot of matches between now and then for you guys to come out and just practice reffing and getting all that in. And then
Matthew, you have a question?
Yep, I have some more questions. Hair or the tail of the mawashi, if those touch the ground, is that an out?
Did you say the hair?
Yeah, like if somebody has long hair.
Yeah, it usually isn't a problem for me when I'm wrestling, but some of you that have hair, yes, if your hair touches, technically you lose. The mawashi itself, the front part of the mawashi can come undone and touch the ground, and it does not count as a loss. If the mawashi itself is coming loose, then if there is a break in the action, no offensive move taking place at that moment, the gyoji, the referee in the ring, should stop the fight and actually have the belt of the wrestler that's loose tightened. And the way this is done is the referee comes over and slaps the shoulders of both wrestlers and says mata, gets them to stop the action, and they should remain in position where they are. And the referee then either does the belt himself or has someone come and tighten the belt of the wrestler in which it's loose. You try to get the wrestlers in pretty much the exact position that they were before the action was stopped. And then you, when you hit their, or you say hakioi again to get them to start. I see that there is a question about I mentioned about the front of the mawashi. I'm not talking about the part of the mawashi that covers your groin area. If that comes loose, you lose the fight. If the part that typically gets tucked under as you're tying the belt, sometimes that works its way out and falls down. And if that touches the ground, it's okay. And we actually have a video showing that, a clip that we'll look at in just a minute.
And Brandon, what's your you want to go? Sorry, I was about to be like, Brandon, what's your question? But
So I have two, right? So is there an age limit on judges? I mean, we have a junior champion that, I mean, I'd like to teach him as much of this as I can and maybe have him rough some of these. That's the first question.
I don't think there's an official policy on that I'm aware of. I would say talk with whoever's running the tournament to make sure. There could be something for insurance purposes or something where they may have an age that you need to be at least 18. I'm not sure. But in general, there's no official policy that I'm aware of concerning age.
Okay. And then the second question is, so at Nationals, one of the juniors actually did do a full frontal and didn't get disqualified because apparently that's a U.S. rule that doesn't count as a DQ.
No, that's an international rule. And I went to the World Amateur Championships when I was living in Japan in, I think, 1994 or 1995. And I saw one of the wrestlers from the U.S., his mawashi, he was thrown and his mawashi actually came completely off. And he lost the fight anyway because it was in the process of being thrown. But if he had not touched the ground, he still would have lost, because if you think about it, the reason why it's a disqualification is because that's the only thing that your opponent has to grab onto that you want them touching. So, yeah, you can't, even if they're wearing a shirt or a bandage or a brace, you can't grab any of that type of stuff. You can only grab the mawashi on the part that is parallel to the ground, let's say. Any part that's perpendicular to the ground, the front or the back, you're not able to touch.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I feel like that's pretty common. I've heard of a lot of sports that put the responsibility of a wardrobe malfunction on the person that put it on,
Yes.
the wearer. So that makes sense.
In a professional sense, one of the reasons why, and if you watch sometimes professional sumo, you'll see someone who their belt, instead of when someone goes to grab their mawashi, it just grabs onto it. You'll actually see them and it'll like lift up and a whole loop kind of comes done. Sometimes wrestlers will tie their belt loosely if they know that their opponent is a grappler who requires the belt in order to win. So they'll tie it loose so that they can't get leverage on them, or they'll tie it exceptionally tight so that they can't get their fingers underneath one of the layers.
Okay. Is that what happened to Torono Fuji?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
It looked like that.
Yeah.
Matt, did you get your question in?
I always have more questions, but are you allowed to clasp your hands behind someone's back?
No.
No, not
I
at
think
all.
that's called gasho. And in sumo, you're not allowed to clasp your hands behind your opponent to squeeze them or pick them up or anything like that. You can come close. You can have your hands all the way around to the back of their mawashi and have grips with both hands on their belt, but you cannot clasp your own hand behind your opponent's back.
Mhm. Also, another maybe relevant question in recent news. If somebody's celebrating after a win, regardless if they do a backflip or front flip or whatever, what is the IFS's rules or what's allowed?
Yeah, again, that's one that is more of a tradition than a rule. I would just, again, before your tournament starts, I would kind of go over this, especially given recent events. I was there at the match when that happened, and I thought it was excessive, but it also got much worse afterwards because of how it was handled. So if there's not going to be an official policy written down, I think you still need to kind of go over with people that in sumo you need to show respect at all times. And even yokozuna in the past have been admonished and by their oyakata, their stable masters, for showing too much emotion on the ring or throwing their arm up or different things like that.
Justin, did you have a question or?
Oh, well, yeah. Like grabbing yourself. Can you grab yourself in front of your opponent? Like if you got over both their arms, you like grab your wrist, like your own wrist?
Yes.
Or
if you're coming up under their wrist to do a move like a kimedashi, you can grab your hands there. Just don't try and avoid doing this. Grab your wrists if you're going to do it, but you definitely cannot put your arms around your opponent and grab them from behind.
Okay, cool.
And then Jake, it looked like you had your hand raised as well. I want to. Okay. Let me see. I think Cody had a comment in there. Oh yeah. Just so everyone knows, so because not everyone in the chat follows international amateur sumo. There was an event where someone from another country won a match, did a backflip, and they got reprimanded, and they had to redo the match, and they ended up winning again, but it's caused some issues in the community since. So, showboating is not something that is once is the once in your if you're in the ring, show as much respect as possible, stoic, bow, and then as soon as you step out, you can say yes or something like that. But make sure you show your respect during the match.
If you're going to participate in sumo, then you have to realize how ancient the sport is and the traditions that are a part of it. And even though you may be from a country or you're used to being in a sport where that type of thing is prevalent, it's just not appropriate for this sport. Okay, what's our next slide there, George?
I forgot we had slide. No.
Okay, so after I go over what's listed on this page, some of this we've already talked about. I'd like to go through some videos that Rob helped edit that came directly from the International Sumo Federation training that I took recently. But basically, these are kinjite, or the prohibited moves in sumo. You're supposed to stop a fight immediately if any of these things are occurring. Punching with a closed fist, poking with fingers like Three Stooges style, especially in the eyes, kicking above the waist. And typically this would only happen if one of the wrestlers is in a low position and you're in a high position. Grabbing hair, which is what the picture shows on the slide. Choking. So you cannot squeeze the throat. There is a technique called nodowa where you can have your hand around, but really what you're doing is you're pushing up the chin. You're not actually restricting airflow. Again, grabbing the mawashi on the horizontal part of the mawashi, the part going through the groin, the pouch in the front, or the part in the back that's going through your butt crack, basically. Stay away from those. If it's an incidental thing, the referee can kind of come over and slap one of the wrestlers on the hand and try and get them to let go, but it can mean an immediate disqualification. Bending back less than 3 fingers. I would encourage you not to practice bending back 3 or more fingers. It's not really a great wrestling technique for sumo, but less than 3 fingers can get you immediately suspended, disqualified. No biting. Slapping to the face. This is one that always comes up in amateur sumo because there are certain techniques, tsupari, where you're pushing, thrusting, and sometimes there's an accidental hit to the face. If someone does what we call a roundhouse slap, more than shoulder width, and comes in, that should be an immediate disqualification. If someone is doing tsupari, the thrusting, going after their opponent, and there's incidental contact to the face, typically what I would do is after that match is over, I would go and find that wrestler and explain to them what the proper technique is and kind of give them a warning to not let it happen again. If it's one time during a fight, it's really no big deal. What you're really looking for is someone who's consistently slapping to the face multiple times in a row. This is amateur. It's not a part of amateur sumo, although it is a part of professional sumo.
Justin, do you want to go with your question?
Yeah. So I've grabbed like the knot itself of the mawashi before. Is that kind of like a faux pas, or is that okay?
Yeah, the reason you're not supposed to grab the knot is because you could potentially untie the belt. So try your best to stay away from that. Again, incidental contact when you're trying to grab in that area and you grab it and you readjust. I don't think a referee is going to stop the fight from that. But if you grab onto that and pull, you could potentially loosen their belt to the point where then if it were to come loose and fall, they lose the match. So that's why you're not supposed to grab onto the knot itself.
Okay.
Brandon, do you want to go next?
It doesn't say headbutting. Is there a rule for that?
There's not a specific rule for that. You don't see head butting like during a match, head butting. You see wrestlers at the tachi lots of times hitting heads. There's not a rule here that says, no stabbing with a knife either. But basically, if it's something that you've never seen in a match before, it shouldn't be allowed. So the headbutting, intentionally headbutting someone, like rearing back your head and hitting them, would not be allowed.
I was going to say, wouldn't that fall under the intent to injure or intent to hurt without
Yes.
like any pushing kind of thing? Like there's joint locks that would not be technically illegal, but if you do it a certain way, it's not pushing them out of the ring and it's just trying to hurt them. So
Correct. Yes.
I think that is an explicit rule, isn't it?
I've never seen it. It's not in the IFS rules on refereeing. I think it's one of those things that people just understand as a part of the sport. This is sumo is supposed to be a way of training for battle without deadly force. People would do sumo wrestling to get stronger and to be prepared for battle. Whereas if you're a samurai and you're practicing with swords and you make a mistake and cut off someone's arm, they're not really going to be able to fight very well in the next battle.
Matt, do you want to go with your question?
Yeah. As a side judge, I assume like if you see somebody's toes step out and it seems like the match is still going and no one else noticed it, you're supposed to wait, right? No matter what. Wait for the match.
You're supposed to immediately raise your hand if you
okay.
see someone's foot go out. You don't stop the fight. The gyoji, the referee, would be the one to stop the fight. And if he doesn't notice it and the fight continues on, you just keep your hand raised until the fight finishes. And then there'll be a mono-e to discuss what you saw.
Got it.
All right, George, let's do the videos and the editing part that Rob did, and we'll discuss. Then we'll have just one last slide to go over in my presentation.
Yeah, give me one moment here. I know I had the videos and I know I had it ready to go.
Okay. Well, we'll just go over we'll go over these key points since they're up here for right now.
Okay.
So
just so you know, also the way the video, I did put a slight bit of black space between each of the examples because they replay a couple times, so you don't have to worry about pausing it until we hit the black space.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So just a few key points I thought to highlight at the end here is make sure that you move as a gyoji. Try not to stand in place. Just keeping in mind that you don't want to block the camera or the chief judge's view if at all possible. Make a decision and stick with it. We all make mistakes. We all make bad calls. It's just part of being human, and the fact that you're trying to judge something that's happening very rapidly sometimes. The chief judge has the final word in what happens, as we've talked about. So if there is a disagreement with the referee, if the chief judge disagrees or any of the other judges, there'll be a discussion and they'll have the ultimate authority. Safety of the athletes is a priority. So the reason we're there is both to call the winner and to prevent bad things from happening. If you see that wrestlers are going to fall into, like if you're a judge and they're going to fall into you, try and help brace the athletes as they're coming down or get up and move out of the way. You really want to try and avoid contact. Several times I've been run over by wrestlers during fights. It happens because, again, things just move so quickly sometimes. But just try and watch out for their safety. And if you make a mistake, don't worry about it. Again, we're all going to do it. Just go on, keep doing your job. You'll hear about it later. Someone will come up to you and complain. But I don't think there's a sport out there where the referees or umpires or whoever don't deal with that all the time. It's just a part of how it goes.
I got to switch the page over real quick to the
Okay.
to the video. But
Justin, did you have a question while he's doing that?
Yeah. So I've judged a fair number of like sword fighting matches, and sometimes, like every judge sees something different. If that happens in sumo, how do you guys handle that? Do you like just watch the exchange, or
That's why that's why there are 5 judges, and the chief judge has the deciding vote. So it's kind of like the Supreme Court. You know how there's an uneven number because one person has the ultimate authority. So that's why in sumo, the chief judge makes the final decision. If 2 judges say one way and 2 judges say another, the chief judge is the one who makes the final opinion. Although the good news is that the vast majority of the time, if there's that much dissension in what happened, you have the Tori Naoshi option where you actually just have a rematch.
okay?
All right.
I'm going to throw it like that. Just rematch if it's that close.
Yeah.
you guys ready to start the video?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Each one of these is going to be shown like 3 times. So just watch and see if you can figure out what's wrong or which wrestler you would call as the winner in the match.
Yeah, each of them is prefaced with a "who won" kind of comment.
So does anybody recognize already which technique this is? Suridachi, correct. So one wrestler is being picked up in the air, but the other wrestler's foot actually goes out first. But the winner in this fight is the one who steps out because he is in control of his opponent up in the air. There we go. We can go on to the second one. Any ideas on this one?
And down before, but for safety.
Shinitai?
Right. This is the shinitai. So the wrestler who's on top actually touches the ground first by putting his hand down. But because that hand going down is to prevent injury to himself or others, and the other wrestler is already clearly in an unrecoverable position, he's off balance, there's no way he can come back, then this is the shinitai. So the wrestler on top is the winner in this fight. And if you have a chance to ever practice with mats next to the ring like that, that's an excellent way of doing some of your moves. Like that's a good way for safety.
Sorry, hold on real quick.
I have a crash pad at my house. I just have to try and bring it to the park.
Excellent.
I didn't know you had one. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, my kids like to jump into it.
All right, the next one is going to be pretty obvious, and they stop it right after it happens. So what's the problem here?
There is no pimp slapping in sumo.
No slapping in the
Illegal
face.
slap.
Yeah. And
It's
not
a
is it
full
just
open slap.
Yeah, not is it just a slap to the face, but it's the roundhouse kind where he's really getting his arms going out beyond shoulder width and coming in. Now you will see this in professional sumo again, and I've seen someone knocked out cold by this. So
So
Right,
just to
next-
clarify,
yes,
no face slapping unless it's
Yes.
incidental. Okay.
yes. It inadvertently it does happen because when you are thrusting like this and trying to hit shoulders and chest and the other guy is moving, sometimes it's going to occur. But if we see you going directly to the face, we have to stop it.
Okay.
All right, so which wrestler wins? The one whose belt came undone or the other guy?
The one whose belt came undone.
Yes.
That'd be my guess.
But that is correct. But why? What is the point that it's trying to make here?
Well, that
First
you
guy
used
untied it.
He was in the middle of a
Uh,
throw.
does not count if it hits
Yeah.
the ground.
Right. This is what we were talking about earlier. And I said if that front loop comes undone and touches the ground first, you still win. If the part covering your groin comes undone, then everybody loses.
So, you see in the video the one that was thrown pulled on and untied that loop. Does that not
Yes.
automatically disqualify him?
I think they're doing that just for demonstration purposes to make it come loose. I don't think they were necessarily doing that to show that you shouldn't be grabbing that part of the belt. I think that was just how they had to stage it so that it would come loose.
Fair enough.
Because if it was loose before they started fighting, the referee should make them retie it.
If I could
understand, so it was just a way of making the belt come loose for demonstration purposes.
I do have a quick question. If
Yes.
you notice here on that, so he kind of rolls on the side of his foot there. Is that an
Yes.
example of a, hey, he's rolling the side of foot, but he doesn't lose because it's part of
Correct.
Okay.
And if you watch his back foot, his right foot actually rolls over on the top of his foot and touches the ground first. But that's in the middle of his throw. So again, that doesn't count as a loss.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an example, I think, of what I was kind of asking is sometimes those sides of your foot roll over depending on the move. Yeah, so cool. That's good.
Okay.
Good to know.
All right. Let's start this back up. He didn't even touch the ground.
False start.
False start on the offense.
Yes.
30.
So this one's pretty blatant, but if you watch the wrestler on the right, his fists never come in contact with the ground. So the referee never called the fight to start. So even though the referee actually indicates that he's the winner,
please look
this
at
would
the
have to be a
hand of the
rematch.
competitors. Look at the hand of the competitors.
This is a recording of a Zoom call. So that was the lady who led this call speaking up then. All right, next scenario. Okay, the referee called the fight, the winner of this fight is the one who just crossed the ring at the end and pushed the opponent out.
Look at the foot of the competitor.
But what actually happened here?
So this is where the
Heel
judge
touch.
his hand, right? The judge should raise their hand to say that I saw that go out and then call it.
That's correct. See, from this position, the Gyoji has a hard time being able to see, but the wrestler's heel does actually touch outside of the ring. You can stand on top of the Tawara, but once you go outside, then it's a loss. All right, what's wrong in this scenario?
They're not wrestling anymore.
Please look at the mawashi,
Oh, the Mawashi.
the
Loose
back
mount,
of the
loose-
mawashi of the opponent.
Loose
The
mount.
West competitor's mawashi.
Yes. So in this instance, with the competitor's belt coming loose like that, the referee should step up, slap the shoulders of the guys when they're in a still position and say mata and make them hold position and then retie the belt and continue on with the fight.
Please focus on the mawashi. Any problem? Okay. Turn number 8.
See that? He just tapped them on the shoulders. That's what you should do. Now, if it's in the middle of the fight and the referee does not have a chance, the belt comes loose during the fight and the action is nonstop, then you just let the fight continue on. I think they had some technical difficulties on this next one. It kind of stops and starts for a second. Quentin, did you have a question?
Yeah. So when you are awarding the point, you're awarding the point to where they started standing, correct? Not you're not
That is
pointing at the
correct.
wrestler that just got the point.
That is correct. So
That's gonna
you
throw
need
me
to
off.
develop
Okay.
you need to develop some kind of system in your head for remembering which wrestler started on which side, because you have to make the call before they return to where they started. So a lot of times when I'm when I'm refereeing and I'm standing there and the two wrestlers are coming up, let's say I don't know either one of them by name, I'll go, okay, the guy in the black belt is on my right and the guy in the white belt is on my left. Or the guy with the ponytail is on the left and the guy with the bald guy is on my right. Or the girl that has a black top is on my left and the girl with the white top's on my right. And I try and put that in my head so that when the fight is done, it's easier for me to be able to indicate. So sometimes when you see a referee and you think they're confused about who won, it isn't really that they're confused about who won. It's they're confused about remembering which side that wrestler started on.
Is this also an area where like the side judges can kind of like help and like give a head nod or something if you could tell he's like, wait, what side? And you're like, oh,
yes,
this way.
that's correct. And some tournaments and international events, especially, they will actually have like a Velcro strap that they'll put on the back of one of the wrestlers, like a big red strap. And that's always on the guy that's on the west side, for instance, on Nishi. And that way, as the fight's going on, once it's over, you either think the guy with the red strap won, so I'm pointing to my left, or the guy without it won, so I'm pointing to my right. So that actually is very helpful for the referees.
Sorry.
Okay.
Did someone else say something there? Halfway. No.
Yeah, I said hint, George. Let's do that.
I was thinking I should probably do something like that. I don't personally have those straps, but it'd be good to get them. I'll work on that. Okay.
Wrestling uses the ankle bands and stuff, so
Yeah. Oh man, that top shot was rough.
So he's grabbing his back strap.
Focus on the Mawashi, the West competitor's Mawashi.
What's he doing?
Grabbing his butt strap.
Yep. He's grabbing him in the no-no square. Yeah, so you're supposed to stay away from the vertical part of the Mawashi. So remember, this is a Kinjite. You could technically be disqualified in this, but if the referee feels that it's inadvertent, he can come over and try and hit the guy's hand or something to let him know he's in the wrong spot. And I think that's what he's going to do here.
You are not Koji again. No man judge.
I thought he was going to do there.
I think in the Zoom call they just kind of discuss it. Or wait, this might be where it is.
This is video
Yeah. Okay, and see, he tapped him and he moved his hand.
Video number 9. You are the sole man judge right now.
Any idea what happened here?
He called it early.
Yeah. So the referee mistakenly thought that the guy's heels may have touched or something and called the fight before it was over. And how do you resolve this one?
Is this the Torii Inoshi?
Yeah, this one has to be a rematch because it's very possible that the wrestler sees the referee indicating that the other guy won and so he stops fighting. So that one you typically have to see as a rematch.
You are not a Koji.
What's wrong with this one?
You are sitting at the back of the Koji.
Ref standing in front of the camera.
Yeah, the referee is totally blocking everything. The camera view, the judge's view. So this is why you try and avoid
What happened?
obviously, I mean, it would. I don't understand how they could do one where you actually start in the wrong position, but in the middle of the fight, you could end up there.
Well, and it looks like he's just like leaning and not even trying to reposition to get a better view of who actually stepped out. He's just
Yeah.
kind of like leaning to look.
Yeah, you sometimes leaning can be okay, but I think the main point of that one was just the referee was blocking everyone from seeing what happens. So that's you want to avoid that if at all possible. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's the end of it.
Okay. Yeah, so that basically the training I had was about an hour or so long, going over those few videos that we just did, and explaining them in much more detail. But I think you can kind of see the point and understand some of the things that we were talking about and why they shouldn't happen. Does anybody have any final questions? Rich.
Yeah, I just had a question on the rules. Like you said, no kicking above the waist. Like, are you allowed to kick the legs, like sweeps?
Yes, there are specific sumo techniques that are sweeps, in fact. But the main reason that you don't see very many sweeps or kicks of any sort in sumo is because, in general, the whole goal of sumo is to keep both feet on the ground. So if you're moving one foot up in the air to do something in sumo, it's putting you at a disadvantage. You're in a bad position, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So we're not talking about like Muay Thai leg kicks or anything like that, are we?
Yeah, no.
No, those ones. Oh, go ahead.
I think that falls under that general not inflicting harm type thing. You're not trying to simply injure your opponent or wear them down in that type of sense. Like I said, the only things that you will see that are anything close to kicking in sumo are sweeps, where you kick inside of someone's ankle or something to try and knock them off balance. There are leg trips, sotogake, uchigake, that you can use that aren't really kicks, but you do kind of kick behind the knee to get your leg in position to make the trips. So it's just in general not to keep both feet on the ground at all times in sumo.
Okay, so you can attack the legs with your legs, but you can't like attack them with velocity and power.
You cannot kick them to inflict injury. You can only only trip or sweep.
Okay.
And Justin, we could probably like go over some of these in practice and kind of go like what would be an acceptable sweep versus like where the limit of kicking really plays in, or
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, sometimes the rules are confusing because it's like you can't grab yourself, but then you can in certain circumstances. And so you can't kick anybody. But I watched a match the other day, and it's like that was definitely a kick. It was just like with the inside of the foot. Well, you saw that match, right?
They kind of did it more like a inside foot slap to the leg. But no,
Yeah.
I think with these rules, it's more about how it's used and not about the action itself. So like the action is not necessarily illegal unless you're using it in a way that, is just to injure or inflict harm. So it's more just focusing on the usage versus this lock is illegal. This foot cannot touch a leg. They're not as explicit in those ways.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Brenda, were you next?
Yeah, just wondering, in the event that something goes wrong with the mat or in the dohyo save, like say the water comes off or the dirt ring collapses at some point, is it just an automatic redo?
If it's something dramatic like that, that would affect the safety of the wrestlers, then I say you should stop the match and fix whatever the problem is and then have a restart. If something happens and the action is away from where that's happening and it's about to end, I wouldn't want to to stop a match that's going to end anyway without it affecting it. But if I felt in any way that a wrestler was potentially in danger for something, then I would stop the match and have a restart. Matthew?
Okay, yeah. So in the case where somebody's Mawashi comes loose, I'm not sure. Even if we all train up here to be like good refs, I'm not sure all the athletes know what's going on. I feel like you have to tap both athletes on the shoulder, tell them to stop before you tie it up, right?
Yeah, this is one that you have to go over in advance before the tournament starts to let wrestlers know what this means. Because a lot of times, if you stop the fight, they think, okay, well, I'm stopped, and they stand up. But no, what you want to know is that if the referee comes over and touches you and stops the fight, you're supposed to freeze in position. So it's something you just have to explain to the wrestlers. And if the wrestlers both get out of position and you find it impossible to get them back in the position, then you can just have a rematch and start over again. In professional sumo, the only time I've seen this come into play is with something called a mizuiri. If a fight goes for, I think the time limit is 3 minutes. If it goes over 3 minutes, the referee can stop the fight, examine the positions that everyone is in, send them out to get water, rest for a couple of minutes, and then they'll come back in and the referee and the judges, the replay official, everyone gets together to reposition them in exactly this, as close to the exact same position as possible, and restarts the fight.
I didn't know there was a time limit for a match.
It's not a hard and fast time limit, but the point is that if they feel that the wrestlers their health is an issue, that it's a safety issue. You see these big guys especially get to the point where their breathing is very labored after that long of intense activity. So I think that's it. I can't remember the last time I saw one, but I've seen it several times in the professional ranks.
I was reading the rules earlier, and it did say you can stop it after 3 minutes if it's gone beyond that, but it didn't say you have to.
Yeah.
Shoot. 3
I
minutes.
see. Go ahead.
Let's say after 3 minutes of wrestling, yeah, you're gonna need me to. I'm gonna need a break.
Yeah. I see. What happens if someone's changes their grip during this time? Are they disqualified? No. Again, you're trying your best to. We're talking about this scenario so that you're aware of it. But again, this might happen once every 3 tournaments that I've seen something like this happen. So you just do your best, use your best judgment. And again, I think the default, at least in amateur sumo, is that if you can't resolve a situation to everyone's satisfaction, to the judges and the referee's satisfaction, then you just have a rematch to try and be as fair as possible.
Well, if there's no other questions, anything else you have, Packy?
No, I think the last slide is just my contact information. So if any of you have any other specific questions about the presentation, or between now and your tournament, or just whenever, if you want to contact me to ask, I'm happy to share whatever information I can with you. My cell phone number and my email are both on there. So please feel free to contact me if you have any questions.
And then I'm gonna start a for Harvest Days. I'm gonna do a referee chat for people who are specifically not competing. Just so that you guys, I'll tell you guys when we're all practicing. I'll put some more resources in there for you guys. And but also, if anyone has any questions for me, I will, I'll give you guys my cell number and get a hold as well. I'm gonna send out the recording of this, the PowerPoint, and then the link to the example videos too. And really, anything that you guys need, let me know. I'm happy to help out. I'm so glad you guys were all able to come and attend this. And yeah, thank you, Packy, for just your time.
Thank you, George. Sorry I can't be there in person.
It's all good.
I was going to say, do you think I am okay to distribute that 1 hour video that the examples came from, or because I mean, it's just essentially another, like you were saying, it's that entire meeting discussion.
Yeah, I don't know that we told them, the ISF, that we were going to use that video for our training purposes for this meeting. So I think it would be better just to send the edited part at this point. And then if we feel like that's not enough, then maybe we can go back and ask them for permission to share the whole thing.
Gotcha. And I could also go and add the little questions that they had immediately following, and not include all the discussion, but just include the question part. So
yeah, I don't see any problem with that.
Okay, great. Yeah, because basically it's just an A or B who won based on criteria. So yeah, okay. I'll put together a little video like that and share that.
Thank you, Rob.
All right, thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for putting this on. It was helpful.